In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Ti-84 graphing calculator to calculate both slopes and linear regressions, or equations of straight lines. So if you have a Ti-84 graphing calculator, go get it and turn it on. And if you don't, but you have a smartphone, you could download the Calc 84 or Wabbit, W-A-B-B-I-T, app from the App Store. So for the iPhone, it would be Calc 84, and for the Android phones, it would be the Wabbit. So let's get started. I know that recently we've been answering questions like this here on the right of how to find the slope of a line or how to write the equation, and we've used some pretty fancy formulas. So one of them is this formula, and another one was this formula, and then sometimes we rearranged everything into this formula, right? So actually the green formula and the red formula are the exact same representation. So they are both linear equations. They are both equations because they have equal signs in them. And they both represent the same type of relationship, a linear relationship. Now, some of them, the first one here, the point slope formula, the terms are kind of all over the place. And in the red formula here, the slope-intercept formula, they're all organized very nicely into a very specific order, which is the slope and then the y-intercept. But the green sentence and the red sentence, they're kind of the same thing, right? They're just mixed up orders of the same numbers. Now the blue formula over here, that's not an equation. That's not an equation. It has no equal sign in it. It's just an expression of a comparison of two numbers, right? It's a ratio. It's the ratio of the change in the y to the change in the x. So we've been using these formulas, and oftentimes we'll use all three of them, or three formats, in one question. Like, let's say number 2. Write the equation of the line that passes through the points 8, 1 and -2, 9. Well, first you would use this blue formula. Then you would pick a single point and you would use this green formula, and then you would rearrange it into this red formula. So you'd have to use all three of these things. But what I'm going to show you in this video today is how you can use this graphing calculator and not have to do any of those three formulas. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's take a look at how we use the graphing calculator. So I've got some directions here on these two slides. So I've got some screenshots of the actual graphing calculator over here, and I've got the actual written steps on the left side over here. Now I know it looks pretty intimidating, but the sequence is fairly simple, right? What you're going to do is you're going to take your 2 points. So let me show you those points again. So we'll start with number 1. You're going to take these 2 points, -3, 12, and 5, 6, and you're going to enter them into your calculator. And once you do that, the only thing that you need to do to complete the question by finding the slope or the rate of change is to press another series of buttons. So let's get started here. I'm going to open my calculator, and the first thing I'm going to do is press this stat button. Okay, so get your calculator out. Get your calculator out, and let's find that stat button. Do you see it? Yep, it's right here on the same row as the green key. Stat. Now once you click it, you're going to see a menu pop up. And that's what I'm showing you here on the right-hand side of my Smart Notebook. This menu has 3 sections: Edit, Calc, and Tests. Well, you're going to be editing your statistics. That's what stat stands for. You're going to be editing your statistics. So we're going to choose number 1. Now you can either use these arrows to choose particular numbers, or you actually can just press the digit you want. So I'm going to press the digit 1. And that brings me to a list. List 1, list 2, list 3, list 4, etc., etc. So now you understand why it's step number 2 in my directions over here on the left say type the x values into the L sub 1 list. right? So all of my x values will be typed into L1, and all of my y values will be typed into L2, list 2. So I'm going to move my screen over again, and let's see if we can't type these numbers in. So again, stat, edit, and this is where you enter your points. So I'm going to type a -3, and then I press enter. And instead of going over to type the 12, I'm just going to go and type my next x coordinate, which is going to be a 5. Enter. Now I'm going to press my right arrow over, and I'm in the list 2, or my y column. So my pair for -3 is 12, so I have to type that first, and then I have to type my 6. All right, that's it. That's the hardest part. The calculator is going to do all the rest of the work for you. So now that my points are entered, I don't need to see my question screen anymore, so I'm going to go back to my directions. My directions say for step 4 to press the stat button, right? Press stat again, and then use the right arrow, so press the stat button, and then instead of editing the list, because we already edited the list, we want to calculate something in that list. So look at my little right arrow button here, right? You see that? That's how you get over to the word calc. So go ahead and press that right arrow, and now we have a new menu of options. And this is pretty extensive. It even goes past the number 9, that's why there's an arrow there. But if you look at the list that we have here right now, number 4 should look pretty familiar to you. Now, I know they don't use the variable m, x plus b. They actually use the variable a, x plus b, but that's the same thing, right? So for our linear regression, or our linear equation, y equals mx plus b, we're going to choose number 4, linear regression. So you can either arrow down and highlight number 4, or you can just press the digit on your calculator, number 4. Now the calculator is going to ask you some questions. Now this seems complicated, but if you want the shortcut, it is just press the enter button 5 times, okay? So is your x coordinate in list 1? Yes, press enter. Is your y coordinate in list 2? Yes, press enter. Now the frequency list, the storing of the equation, all of that we can use, but it's not necessary for today. So we're going to skip these questions by just pressing enter 2 more times. 1, 2, and now, are you ready to calculate? Are you ready to calculate the slope? Yes, so press enter a 5th time. All right, your calculator just calculated the slope of those 2 points. The slope is -0.75, or -3/4, right? 0.75 is -3/4. So I'm going to go back to that question there. And so it asked to find the rate of change. So the rate of change is m, right? Typically. So I'm going to say it's -0.075. Now, if you don't believe me, do you remember when we used the y2 minus y1 formula, y2 x2 minus x1 formula, -6/8, also known as -3/4. Look at that, I didn't have to do any of this work. The calculator did it for me. Now, that one wasn't too bad. I know for some of you, you might be thinking, oh, well, it was so much faster to just do it on my own, like you just wrote in blue, Mrs. Henderson. Why would I go through the hassle of doing that on the calculator? Well, the answer is maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you wouldn't. But for example number 2, right? For example number 2, it actually would be a lot more work. Because not only would you have to calculate the slope, 9 minus 1 over -2 minus 8, so 8 over -10, also known as 4 over -5, and then you'd have to pick a point, and then you'd have to write it in the point slope formula, and then you'd have to distribute, and then you'd have to distribute that, and then you'd have to add 1 to both sides, and you might be like, ugh, that's a lot of work, Mrs. Henderson. So instead of doing all that work, why don't we try using the graphing calculator? So let's do that whole process over again. Do you remember how it started? So I just press the on button or the clear button. I'm going to start by pressing the stat button and editing my list of points, number 1. Now I don't want these points anymore, so I can press the delete button if I want, or I could just type right over it. So I have an x-coordinate of 8, enter, and another x-coordinate of -2. Those are my x-coordinates. Now for my y-coordinates. They are 1 and 9. All right, that's it. That's the only work I have to do. I don't have to use the y2 minus y1 formula. I don't have to use the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 point slope formula. The calculator is going to give me the equation of this line immediately by pressing stat, arrow over to calc, and choosing number 4. Do you remember how many times we have to press enter? Yeah, 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there you have it. The equation in slope-intercept form is y equals -0.8x plus 7.4. That's exactly what this is. 4/5, right? -4/5 is -0.8. And if I had distributed it here, if I had actually done that multiplication, I would have gotten y minus 1 equals -4/5 x plus 32 over 5. And then I would have had to add 1, and then I would have started freaking out because nobody likes to add those things. But 32/5 plus 5/5 would be 37/5. And then this would be the right answer. So this is a right answer. But look how long and look how much work I had to do. The calculator did it right away, right? 37 divided by 5 is 7 2/5, also known as 7.4. All right, I'm going to erase all that messy work. Now I'm going to ask you guys to pause the video and try number 3 on your own. So pause the video now. I'm going to move my calculator here in case you need to look back at the series of buttons you need to press. Okay, good luck. All right, let's see how you did. First thing, we press stat and then edit. We take out the old points, we put in the new points. Whoops, I'm in the wrong column. X is 3. Second x is -1, the y's are -6, and the other y is 2. And then we press stat, arrow over to calc, number 4, linear regression. Press enter 5 times, and voila, easy peasy. Y equals -2x plus 0, also known as y equals -2x. That was pretty fast, right? So now if you want the equation of a line, you don't have to use the point slope formula. You don't have to use the slope formula. You can just use your graphing calculator. Okay, I think you're ready to try a few questions on your own. So you can always rewind the video to see these calculator steps if you need to. But here's some questions for you to try using your graphing calculator. Write the equation of the line that passes through these given points for each 3 equation. If possible, write your answer using fraction form. Okay, pause the video now. All right, let's see how you did. Here are the solutions. So I recommended that you use fraction form, but if you had written y equals 0.5x plus 5 for number 2 instead of what I wrote, that would also be correct. Okay, this would also be correct, but only because 1/2 is a terminating fraction. So let's talk about this third one here. There actually is no other way to write this answer but fraction form. And that's because when you used your calculator and you determined the linear regression here, you got a repeating decimal here. And if you terminate a repeating decimal, you would get a totally different answer. And we do not use repeating bars within a formula. So you cannot write that, because you write a formula so that you could put values in. Right? If I were to put a value in, I wouldn't be able to answer this because you can't multiply infinity. You can't multiply infinity. So if you get a repeating decimal here on your calculator, you need to convert that into a fraction. So 0.333 repeating is the fraction 1/3. All right, that concludes our lesson on using the Ti-84 graphing calculator to help us calculate equations.